Another Cold War-era aircraft this time escorted by modern jets. A Russian Tu-95 bomber nears U.S. airspace, and F-22 Raptors are sent to intercept. The message? America's skies are never left unguarded. According to NORAD, 2 Russian Tu-95 Bear bombers were detected flying within the ADIZ off the coast of Alaska. US F-22 stealth fighters from Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson were immediately scrambled to intercept and shadow the bombers. The Tu-95 is a nuclear-capable strategic bomber from the Soviet era, still operational due to its range and payload. The F-22 Raptor, by contrast, is America's most advanced air superiority fighter built for speed, stealth, and deadly precision. The Air Defense Identification Zone is not sovereign airspace, but any aircraft entering it must identify itself. Russia frequently tests these boundaries, and the US responds each time to assert vigilance and deterrence. These bomber patrols serve multiple purposes: training, testing US response times, collecting radar signatures, and sending political messages, especially during times of international friction, such as the Ukraine war or NATO drills. 3 groups of Russian nuclear-capable bombers and fighter escorts buzzed the airspace in Japan's northern waters on Tuesday, 1 week after similar long-range sorties near the US coast off Alaska. 2 Tu-95 MS strategic bombers, accompanied by Su-35S and Su-30SM fighter jets, trained over international waters in the Sea of Japan, Russia's defense ministry said. The announcement did not reveal the exact date or time of the flight, which it said lasted 10 hours. The Sea of Japan, also known as the East Sea in North and South Korea, is a marginal sea in the Western Pacific shared by Japan, the 2 Koreas, the Russian Far East. Russian military aircraft and ships routinely operate in the area under Japan's naval and air surveillance. The Tu-95 MS, known by the NATO reporting name of Bear H, is a strategic cruise missiles carrier capable of delivering 6-14 missiles. The Tu-95 MS and the Tu-160, which NATO calls Blackjack, are the aerial components of Russia's nuclear triad. At first glance, the Russian Tu-95 Bear strategic bomber looks like a 59-year-old flying anachronism, a Cold War leftover that has outlived its usefulness in a century when stealth is king. The Bear is showing signs of its age. In recent months, 2 Tu-95 crashes led to the grounding of the entire fleet of more than 50 aircraft to resolve mechanical issues. Besides, there is nothing stealthy about the Bear, even when the bomber is in top-notch shape. The turboprop-powered Tu-95 is loud, really loud. In fact, it's so noisy that listening devices on submerged US submarines can hear a bear flying overhead. Furthermore, it has the radar signature of a flying big box store. The plane is huge. Photos of lumbering Bear H bombers intercepted by sleek US or NATO warplanes as they flew toward protected airspace are some of the most recognizable images of the East-West nuclear standoff during the 1970s and 80s. But Cold War aviation genius Andrei Tupolev was no fool. He designed an adaptable plane that can carry one hell of a loadout when it comes to bombs and missiles, fly thousands of miles from bases in Russia, loiter on the edges of enemy airspace, and deliver megatons of nuclear destruction. As recently as July 4th, multiple Bear bombers flew into US air defense identification zones off California and Alaska. In fact, some of the Bears flew within 40 miles off the California coastline. Technically, the bombers were still within international airspace. But call it Cold War 2.0, the Kremlin is sending the same message the bomber has always sent. The current missions being flown by the Tu-95 are absolutely designed and principally intended to appeal to Russian pride and national identity, said Scott Palmer, professor of history at Western Illinois University and author of Dictatorship of the Air, Aviation Culture and the Fate of Modern Russia. The Russian defense industry fell into disarray after the collapse of the Soviet Union and has not recovered enough to sustain a new bomber program, Christensen said. The Russians are developing a next-generation jet bomber that is expected to start test flights in the early 2020s, but it remains to be seen what they can build and how soon it can be deployed. Generally, airplanes can fly for a very long time, as long as spare parts are available, he said. Propeller engines are generally speaking less complex to operate than jet engines, and many modern aircraft types also use propellers. Moreover, although a Bear would not last long against a modern air defense system, it is equipped with long-range cruise missiles that provide considerable standoff capability. So for now, the Bear serves Russia's needs for standoff air-delivered weapons, signaling and national prestige. It may be flawed, but the Bear bomber will be going strong as both a weapons platform and a symbol of Russian might for years to come, even with plans to build a jet-powered bomber during the next decade. Upgrades will allow the Cold War giant to keep flying through the 2040s. It's old, it's obvious, and it has mechanical problems facts hard to ignore, while the Tu-95 plays a key role in a highly orchestrated and much exaggerated effort by the Kremlin to impress its foreign rivals. But it's equally hard to ignore a bomber that can fly within miles of your shoreline armed to the teeth with nuclear-tipped cruise missiles. This isn't the first time. US and Canadian jets have intercepted Russian aircraft near Alaska over a dozen times in recent years. The dance continues, often at high altitudes with global tensions reflected in each maneuver. Though intercepts are routine, they are also dangerous. One misstep, a wrong turn, an aggressive maneuver could spark a confrontation with far-reaching consequences. That's why professionalism and discipline are key. Russia is militarizing the Arctic, reopening old bases and deploying radar systems and cruise missiles. These flights near Alaska test US resolve and help Russia assert control over key northern corridors. Once the F-22s made contact, they escorted the Russian bombers away from the ADIZ. No weapons were fired, and the aircraft remained in international airspace, but the silent message was delivered. You are being watched. The Pentagon continues to monitor the skies, and lawmakers are calling for increased investment in air defense and Arctic surveillance. As great power competition heats up, so will these aerial encounters. In the frozen skies above Alaska, a new cold front is forming, not of snow, but of stealth, strategy, and geopolitical gamesmanship. The Raptors are watching. Should the US take a tougher stance against these Russian flybys? Or is this just Cold War theater on repeat? Share your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more real-time military briefings from global hotspots.